She was one of the most powerful women in America, running a $3 billion medical technology empire that changed millions of lives. But behind the walls of her mansion, Catherine Whitmore's own life was falling apart. Every morning she woke up to a silence that broke her heart. Every night she cried herself to sleep, wondering if tomorrow would be different. It never was. Until one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when she discovered something that would shatter everything she thought she knew about science, medicine, and miracles. Catherine Whitmore wasn't just successful. She was legendary. At 42, she had built Whitmore Medical Technologies from a startup in her garage into one of the most innovative healthcare companies in the world. Her algorithms had revolutionized patient care. Her devices had saved countless lives. Forbes called her a visionary. Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people on the planet. She had more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. She had power that could open any door. She had respect from every corner of the medical community. But none of it mattered, because every single day, Catherine walked into a bedroom on the second floor of her palatial home and faced the one problem her brilliant mind couldn't solve, the one disease her company couldn't cure, the one battle she was losing. Lily and Lucas were 5 years old. They were beautiful children with bright eyes and soft curls. They looked like any other kids their age, but they couldn't move. They couldn't speak. They couldn't do any of the things that 5-year-olds should be able to do. They were born 16 weeks early. Tiny fighters who came into the world weighing barely 2 pounds each. Catherine remembered holding them for the first time, these impossibly small miracles, in the neonatal intensive care unit, tubes and wires covering their fragile bodies. The doctors said it was touch and go. The first week was critical. Then the first month. Then the first year. Lily and Lucas survived. But the complications didn't end. By their first birthday, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. They weren't hitting any developmental milestones. They couldn't sit up. They couldn't babble. They couldn't grab toys or respond to voices the way other babies did. The diagnosis came when they were 18 months old. Severe cerebral palsy with spastic quadriplegia, complete paralysis of all 4 limbs, damage to the parts of the brain that controlled speech and movement. The neurologists used terms like profound disability and permanent condition and quality of life considerations. They told Catherine to prepare herself. Her children would never walk, never talk, never live independently. The best she could hope for was keeping them comfortable. Catherine refused to accept it. She was a problem solver. She had built her entire career on finding solutions where others saw dead ends. She assembled the best medical team money could buy: pediatric neurologists from Johns Hopkins, physical therapists from the Mayo Clinic, speech pathologists from Stanford, occupational therapists who specialized in severe disabilities. They tried everything: intensive physical therapy 5 days a week, hyperbaric oxygen treatments, stem cell procedures that were still experimental, alternative medicine approaches that most doctors dismissed. Catherine didn't care about conventional wisdom. She cared about results. But nothing worked. After 4 years of treatments, after spending millions of dollars, after consulting with every specialist on Earth, Lily and Lucas remained exactly the same. Trapped in bodies that wouldn't obey their minds. Silent witnesses to a world they couldn't participate in. So Catherine made a choice. She stepped back from her company. She promoted her second-in-command to CEO and moved herself to chairman of the board. She worked from home, managing the business remotely, so she could spend every possible moment with her children. She fed them, bathed them, read to them even though they couldn't respond. played music for them even though they showed no reaction. Her friends called it admirable. Her colleagues called it dedication. Her therapists called it healthy coping. But Catherine knew the truth. She was drowning. And she had no idea how to save herself or her children. Every day followed the same heartbreaking routine. Catherine woke at 6. She checked on the twins, made sure they were positioned correctly in their beds, made sure the monitors were working properly. A nurse arrived at 7 to help with morning care. Bathing, dressing, feeding through tubes, physical therapy exercises that never seemed to accomplish anything. Catherine watched it all. She participated when she could. She held Lily's hand and stroked Lucas's hair and whispered words of encouragement that went unheard. She looked into their eyes and saw awareness there, trapped behind the prison of their bodies. She knew they understood her. She was certain of it. But she had no way to reach them. No way to connect with them beyond the most basic level. The nurses were professional and kind. The therapists were patient and encouraging. Everyone said the same things. We're doing everything we can. We're seeing small improvements. Don't give up hope. But Catherine could read between the lines. She understood what they weren't saying. This is as good as it gets. This is the rest of their lives. This is the rest of your life. By mid-morning, Catherine would retreat to her office and try to focus on work. Conference calls about product development, video meetings about quarterly earnings, strategic planning sessions about market expansion. She went through the motions. She made decisions. She approved budgets. But her heart wasn't in it anymore. How could she focus on saving other people's lives when she couldn't save her own children? Catherine's husband, Robert, had died 3 years ago. A car accident on a rainy night, a truck that ran a red light, a tragedy that happened in seconds and changed everything forever. He never got to see Lily and Lucas grow beyond their 2nd birthday. He never had to watch them struggle. He never had to face the reality of what their lives would be. Sometimes Catherine thought he was the lucky one. She immediately felt guilty for thinking that. Robert would have been devastated. He would have moved heaven and earth for their children just like she was doing. But at least he was spared this daily heartbreak. At least he didn't have to live with the knowledge that all his money, all his connections, all his determination meant nothing in the face of this cruel disability. Catherine had plenty of people around her. Nurses, therapists, household staff, business associates. But she had never felt more alone in her life. No one understood what it was like to have everything the world said mattered, while lacking the only thing that actually did matter. No one understood the guilt she felt. The guilt of wondering if somehow she had caused this. If working too hard during her pregnancy had contributed to the premature birth. If some genetic flaw she carried had doomed her children before they were even born. The logical part of her brain, the scientist part, knew that wasn't true. Premature birth happened. Complications occurred. It wasn't anyone's fault. But the mother part of her brain, the part that operated on emotion rather than logic, couldn't let go of the guilt. The mansion required a lot of upkeep. Catherine had a housekeeper who came 3 times a week, but she needed someone for daily maintenance. Someone to handle repairs, manage the grounds, help with the heavy lifting that came with caring for disabled children. Her property manager suggested hiring a full-time caretaker and janitor. That's how the posting went up. Simple, straightforward. Live-in position available. Caretaker and maintenance worker needed for private estate. Room and board provided plus salary. Must be reliable, trustworthy, and comfortable working around children with special needs. Catherine reviewed dozens of applications. Most people were overqualified and clearly just wanted access to wealth and connections. Some were underqualified and looking for easy money. A few seemed genuinely interested, but something about them felt wrong. Catherine had good instincts about people. It was one of the skills that had made her successful in business. She could read between the lines of a resume the same way she could read between the lines of a financial report. Then she came across Isaiah Monroe's application. It was simple, almost sparse. High school education, various odd jobs over the past few years, maintenance work, cleaning services, general labor. No elaborate explanations, no attempts to impress. Just straightforward information and a brief cover letter that said he was a hard worker who kept to himself and would be grateful for the opportunity. Something about it resonated with Catherine. Maybe it was the honesty. Maybe it was the lack of pretension. Maybe it was just instinct. She called him for an interview. Isaiah Monroe arrived exactly on time. He was 30 years old, tall and lean, with kind eyes and hands that showed the wear of hard work. He wore clean but worn jeans and a button-down shirt that had seen better days. He was polite but quiet. He answered Catherine's questions with simple, direct responses. No elaboration, no small talk, just the facts. She asked why he wanted the job. He said he needed steady work and a place to live. She asked about his experience with special needs children. He paused for a long moment, something flickering across his face that Catherine couldn't quite read. Then he said he had some experience. He understood it could be challenging. He was comfortable with it. She asked for references. He provided 3, all from previous employers who gave glowing reviews. Hardworking, dependable, honest, keeps to himself but gets the job done. She ran a background check. It came back clean. No criminal record, no red flags. Just a man who had lived a quiet, unremarkable life and was looking for honest work. Catherine made a decision that surprised her. She hired him on the spot. She told him he could move into the guest house on the property, a small but comfortable cottage with its own kitchen and bathroom. She laid out his responsibilities: general maintenance and repairs, groundskeeping, helping the nurses with physically demanding tasks when needed, being available if anything broke or needed attention. Isaiah nodded to everything. He asked a few practical questions about schedules and expectations. He didn't ask about the twins. He didn't pry into Catherine's life or business. He simply accepted the job, thanked her quietly, and said he could start immediately. Isaiah moved into the guest house 2 days later. He arrived with a single duffel bag and a backpack. That was everything he owned. Catherine watched from the main house as he carried his meager belongings inside. She felt a twinge of something. Curiosity, maybe. Or concern. What kind of man in his 30s had so few possessions? What kind of life had he lived? But she didn't ask. She had hired him to work, not to be her friend. And she appreciated that he seemed to understand boundaries. He didn't try to make conversation beyond what was necessary. He didn't ask personal questions. He simply did his job and kept to himself. Over the first week, Catherine observed him working. He was thorough and efficient. He fixed a leaking pipe in the downstairs bathroom. He repaired a section of fence that had come loose. He cleaned the pool and maintained the garden and handled a dozen small tasks that had been piling up. He was exactly what she needed. Competent help without drama or complications. What surprised Catherine was how he interacted with the twins. The nurses brought Lily and Lucas outside most afternoons, weather permitting. Fresh air and sunlight were good for them, the doctors said, even if they couldn't fully appreciate it. The nurses would set up their specialized wheelchairs on the patio, position them so they could see the garden and sit nearby reading or checking their phones, while the children stared blankly at nothing in particular. Isaiah was often working in the garden during these times. He would glance over occasionally. Catherine noticed him watching the children with an expression she couldn't quite identify. Not pity, not discomfort. Something else, something that looked almost like recognition. One afternoon, in his second week, Catherine was in her office when she glanced out the window and saw something unexpected. Isaiah had stopped his work and was standing near the twins' wheelchairs. He wasn't touching them. He was just standing there looking at them. One of the nurses had gone inside to use the bathroom, and for a moment Isaiah was alone with Lily and Lucas. Catherine watched, curious. Isaiah crouched down so he was at eye level with the children. He didn't say anything. He just looked at them. Really looked at them. His expression was complicated, sad, tender, almost painful to witness. He reached out slowly, hesitantly, and touched Lily's hand where it lay motionless on the armrest of her wheelchair. Just a brief touch. Then he stood up quickly and went back to work as the nurse returned. Catherine felt something stir in her chest. A question. A curiosity she couldn't name. There was something about the way Isaiah had looked at her children, like he saw them as people, not just medical cases or tragic circumstances, like he understood something about them that others missed. She filed the observation away and went back to work. But she found herself watching Isaiah more carefully after that. Isaiah developed a routine. He worked hard during the day, completing tasks efficiently and often ahead of schedule. He ate lunch alone in the guest house. He kept the place immaculate. He was polite to the nurses and therapists who came and went. He nodded respectfully to Catherine when their paths crossed, but never initiated conversation. But he always seemed aware of the twins. Catherine noticed it more and more. When Lily and Lucas were outside, Isaiah found reasons to work nearby. He never approached them directly when the nurses were watching, but his attention drifted to them constantly. He would pause in his work and look over. His expression was always the same. That complicated mix of sadness and something Catherine couldn't identify. One day, she found him in the garage fixing a broken shelf. Lily and Lucas were in the adjacent mudroom with their afternoon nurse. The nurse had stepped away briefly to answer a phone call. Isaiah had stopped his work and was standing in the doorway watching the twins. He didn't notice Catherine observing him from the other end of the garage. She saw him take a step toward the children, then stop. His hands clenched at his sides. His jaw tightened. He looked like he was fighting some internal battle. Then he turned abruptly and went back to his work, attacking the broken shelf with more force than necessary. Catherine's curiosity deepened, but she still didn't ask. She still maintained the professional boundary. She told herself it didn't matter. He was doing his job well. That was all that counted. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she wondered. What was Isaiah's story? What had put that look in his eyes when he saw her children? The mansion had a music room that no one used anymore. It was on the first floor down a hallway that was rarely traveled. Inside was a grand piano, a beautiful instrument that Robert had bought years ago with dreams of learning to play. He never got around to it. After he died, Catherine couldn't bring herself to go in there. The room became a monument to lost dreams and abandoned plans. The door was always closed. The piano sat silent and forgotten, gathering dust. Until one evening when Catherine was working late in her office and heard something that made her freeze. Music. Piano music drifting through the house like a ghost from the past. Beautiful, haunting music that made her heart clench. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. Then she stood up and walked toward the sound, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. The music room door was open. Soft light spilled into the hallway. Catherine approached slowly, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. She reached the doorway and stopped, unable to process what she was seeing. Isaiah was sitting at the piano. His eyes were closed. His hands moved across the keys with a grace and skill that seemed impossible for a janitor who lived out of a duffel bag. The music that poured out was professional quality, concert level, the kind of playing that came from years of training and natural talent. Catherine stood frozen, listening. The piece was melancholy and beautiful. It seemed to tell a story of loss and longing. It made her want to cry, even though she didn't know why. Isaiah played for several minutes, lost in the music. Then he stopped abruptly. His hands fell to his lap. His head bowed. Catherine saw his shoulders shake slightly. He was crying. Silent tears that he quickly wiped away. Catherine backed away quietly, her mind reeling. Who was this man? What was his story? Why was someone with such obvious talent working as a janitor? And why did the music make him cry? That night, Catherine did something she wasn't proud of. She went through Isaiah's employment file again, this time really digging. She found his previous addresses. She searched online for any information about him. It took hours of looking, piecing together fragments following digital breadcrumbs. But eventually she found it. 7 years ago, Isaiah Monroe had been a rising star in the classical music world, a prodigy who had won competitions and earned a full scholarship to Juilliard. He was being compared to the greats. Reviewers called him the future of American piano. He had a recording contract and bookings at prestigious venues. He was 23, and the world was his. Then everything stopped. No more performances, no more recordings, no explanation. He simply disappeared from the music world completely. 1 year he was everywhere. The next year he was gone. Catherine searched for explanations but found nothing. Just a blank space where a brilliant career had been. She kept digging. Finally, she found a small news article from a local paper in Ohio. It was brief, barely a paragraph, but it explained everything. Isaiah Monroe, age 26, had lost his 4-year-old daughter Hope to complications from cerebral palsy. Services were private. In lieu of flowers, donations could be made to the Children's Hospital Research Fund. Catherine's breath caught. She read the article 3 times, each word hitting her like a physical blow. Isaiah had a daughter. She had cerebral palsy. She died. And Isaiah had never mentioned her. He had walked into this house, seen Lily and Lucas, and said nothing. Now she understood the look in his eyes, the pain, the recognition. He wasn't just seeing 2 disabled children. He was seeing his own daughter. He was reliving his own tragedy every single day. Catherine didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Should she confront Isaiah? Should she fire him for not disclosing something so significant? Should she pretend she didn't know and let him keep his privacy? Part of her felt violated. He should have told her. He should have been honest about having experience with a disabled child. But another part understood. How do you tell a potential employer that you lost your daughter? How do you explain that kind of pain in a job interview? And Isaiah had never done anything inappropriate. He had never overstepped. He had simply watched her children with the eyes of someone who understood their struggle in a way most people couldn't. By morning, Catherine had made a decision. She would talk to him. Not to fire him. Not to accuse him of anything, but to acknowledge what she knew and see how he responded. She needed to understand who this man was and what he was doing in her home. She found him after breakfast working on replacing some rotted boards on the back deck. She approached, slowly rehearsing what she wanted to say. But when she got close, the words died in her throat. Instead, she heard herself say, "You play beautifully." Isaiah's hands stilled on the hammer. He didn't look up. "I'm sorry. I should have asked permission before using the piano." "That's not what I meant." Catherine took a breath. "I looked you up. I know who you are, who you were. I know about hope." The hammer slipped from Isaiah's hand and clattered on the deck. He stood slowly still, not looking at her. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched. "I should have disclosed that in the interview. I'm sorry. If you want me to leave, I understand. I don't want you to leave." The words came out before Catherine fully thought them through. But once she said them, she realized they were true. "I want to understand. Why did you stop playing? Why are you working as a janitor when you have that kind of talent?" For a long moment, Isaiah said nothing. Then he finally looked at Catherine, and she saw raw pain in his eyes. "I can't play anymore. Not the way I used to. Not after Hope." "Why not?" "Because music was hers." His voice was rough. From the time she was born, she loved it. Even before the diagnosis, before we knew something was wrong, she would go still and peaceful whenever I played. It was the only thing that calmed her. After we found out about the cerebral palsy, after the doctors said there was nothing they could do, music became our connection. I would play for her for hours. She couldn't move. She couldn't talk. But I knew she heard me. I knew she understood. Music was the way I told her I loved her. It was the way she told me she loved me back, even without words. Catherine's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. Isaiah continued his words, coming faster now, like a dam had broken. "The last time I played for her, the night before she died, she smiled. Just a tiny movement at the corner of her mouth. But I saw it. She was happy. And the next morning she was gone, just like that. Peaceful in her sleep. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. And I've never been able to touch a piano again without feeling like I'm betraying her. Like I'm trying to move on when I should be mourning. Like the music should have died with her." "But you played last night," Catherine said softly. "I know." Isaiah's voice cracked. "I've been trying not to. Ever since I moved here. But yesterday was her birthday. She would have been 7. And I walked past that music room and I couldn't help it. I thought maybe if I played I could feel close to her again. I thought maybe it would help. Did it? No." He wiped at his eyes roughly. "It just reminded me of everything I lost. Everything I couldn't save." Catherine stepped closer to Isaiah. She did something she never did. She reached out and touched his arm gently. "I understand." Isaiah looked at her in surprise. "I know what it's like to love someone and not be able to save them. I know what it's like to have all the resources in the world and still be powerless. I know what it's like to wonder if you could have done something different, something more, something better. And I know what it's like to watch every single day as the people you love most suffer, and there's nothing you can do about it." For the first time since she'd met him, Isaiah really looked at Catherine. Not as an employer, not as the rich woman who signed his paychecks, but as another human being who understood his pain. "Your children," he said quietly. "They remind me of hope. Every time I see them, I see her. Same age she was. Same condition. It's like the universe is forcing me to relive it all over again. But I can't leave. I can't walk away from them the way I walked away from music. Does that make sense?" "Yes." Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. "It makes perfect sense." They stood in silence for a moment. Two people who had both suffered unimaginable loss. Two people who had both tried to outrun their pain and found it waiting for them anyway. Two people who were both drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. Then Catherine said something that surprised them both. "Would you play for them? For Lily and Lucas? The way you played for Hope?" Isaiah's eyes widened. "I don't know if I can." "Try." Catherine's voice was urgent now, almost desperate. "Please, I've tried everything else, every therapy, every treatment, every doctor. Nothing works. But maybe music could reach them the way it reached your daughter. Maybe it's not about medicine. Maybe it's about connection. Mrs. Whitmore, Catherine. Please, call me Catherine, and please, just try. What do we have to lose?" Isaiah hesitated for a long time. Catherine could see him fighting with himself. Part of him wanted to refuse. Part of him was terrified. But finally, slowly, he nodded. They agreed to try it that afternoon. Privately. Without the nurses or therapists watching. Just Isaiah, the twins, and the piano. Catherine would observe from a distance, ready to stop if the children showed any signs of distress. At 2:00, Catherine carefully positioned Lily and Lucas in their wheelchairs near the piano in the music room. They sat with their usual blank expressions, staring at nothing. Isaiah stood by the piano, his hands trembling slightly. He looked at Catherine. She nodded encouragement. He sat down at the bench. He placed his hands on the keys. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he began to play. The music was soft at first. A simple melody. Children's lullaby, gentle and soothing. Catherine watched the twins intently, looking for any reaction. At first, there was nothing. They sat as motionless as ever. But then so subtly that Catherine almost missed it, something changed. Lucas's eyes moved. Just slightly. Just enough to shift his gaze toward the piano. His blank stare gained a flicker of focus. It was the first time in months that Catherine had seen him react to any external stimulus. "Keep playing," she whispered urgently to Isaiah. He did. He transitioned from the lullaby into something more complex, something with more emotion. The notes swelled and filled the room. And as they did, Catherine saw something that made her heart nearly stop. Lily's right hand, lying motionless on the armrest of her wheelchair, twitched. Just once, just a small movement of her fingers. But it was movement, voluntary movement, something she hadn't been able to do in 5 years. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. It had to be a coincidence, a random muscle spasm. But then it happened again. Lily's fingers twitched a second time, curling slightly as if trying to reach toward the music. Isaiah was so lost in his playing that he didn't notice. His eyes were still closed. His body swayed slightly with the rhythm. He was somewhere else. Somewhere in the past with his daughter. But the music he was creating was having an effect in the present. Lucas made a sound. A small sound, barely more than a breath. But it was vocalization. Something the doctors had said might never be possible. Catherine's hands were shaking now. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it over the music. She wanted to run to the children. She wanted to shout for the nurses. She wanted to call the doctors and tell them to come immediately. But she forced herself to stay still. To not interrupt. To let the moment unfold. Isaiah played for 20 minutes. When he finally stopped, silence filled the room like a physical presence. He opened his eyes slowly and turned to look at the twins. Then he saw Catherine's face, saw the tears streaming down her cheeks, saw her expression of shock and hope and disbelief. What he asked. What happened? Catherine could barely speak. They moved. Lucas looked at you. Lily moved her hand. Lucas made a sound. They responded to the music. Isaiah stood up quickly, knocking the piano bench backwards. He stared at the children. That's not possible. I saw it. I swear I saw it. Catherine was half laughing, half crying now. Play again. Please, play again. Isaiah sat back down at the piano, his hands shaking badly now. He started playing again, a different piece this time. Faster. More energetic. Catherine watched the twins like a hawk, barely daring to breathe. There! Lucas's eyes definitely moved, tracking the sound. And Lily, oh God, Lily's hand was moving again. Not just twitching, actually moving. Her fingers were curling and uncurling slowly, like she was trying to grasp something. Like she was trying to reach the music that filled the air. Isaiah saw it too this time. His playing faltered for a moment as he noticed Lily's hand. Then he recovered and kept going, tears running down his face as his fingers flew across the keys. He was playing with his whole soul now. Playing for hope. Playing for Lily and Lucas. Playing against death and disability and all the things that tried to steal joy from the world. When he stopped this time, the room was charged with energy. Catherine and Isaiah looked at each other across the space between them. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. They had both witnessed something they couldn't explain. Something the doctors would say was impossible. Something that defied every medical prediction and scientific expectation. Music had reached Lily and Lucas in a way that millions of dollars of treatment couldn't. I need to try something, Isaiah said suddenly. He got up and walked over to Lily's wheelchair. He crouched down in front of her. Gently, carefully, he took her small hand in his. Her fingers were still curled from the movement she'd made. He straightened them slowly, then placed her hand palm down on his own palm. Lily, he said softly. If you can hear me, if you understand me, try to squeeze my hand. Catherine held her breath. Nothing happened for a long moment. Then, so faintly that it was almost imperceptible, Isaiah's eyes widened. She did it, he whispered. She squeezed. Just a little bit. But she did it. Catherine sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. 5 years. 5 years of doctors and specialists and therapists. 5 years of being told that her children would never improve. 5 years of accepting that this was as good as it would get. And in 20 minutes of music, she had seen more progress than in all that time combined. This isn't possible, she said. But even as she said it, she knew it was. She had seen it with her own eyes. The doctors said the doctors were wrong. Isaiah's voice was firm. He was still holding Lily's hand, looking at her with an expression of wonder. Or maybe they just didn't know. Maybe there are some things that medicine can't measure. Maybe connection doesn't show up on brain scans. Catherine's mind was racing. We have to do this again, every day, as many times as possible. We have to see if it continues, if it builds, if they can actually improve. I'll do whatever you need, Isaiah said immediately. If there's even a chance that music can help them the way it helped Hope in her last months, I have to try. Catherine stood up and walked over to where Isaiah was crouched by Lily's wheelchair. She knelt down beside him, taking Lily's other hand. The little girl's eyes were still focused on nothing, her expression still blank. But Catherine could swear there was something different. Some tiny spark that hadn't been there before. We'll do it together, Catherine said. Not as employer and employee, as partners, as two people who love these children and want to give them every possible chance. Isaiah nodded. For the first time since Catherine had met him, he smiled. It was a sad smile, weighted with loss and grief. But it was also a smile of hope. For hope, he said quietly, and for Lily and Lucas. For all of them, Catherine agreed. That evening, after Isaiah had returned to the guest house and the twins were settled for the night, Catherine sat in her office and tried to process what had happened. The rational part of her brain was screaming that she was reading too much into random muscle movements, that she was seeing what she wanted to see because she was desperate for hope, that she was setting herself up for crushing disappointment. But the mother part of her brain, the part that had watched her children for 5 years and knew every detail of their condition, knew what she had seen was real. Those movements weren't random. They were responses. Lily and Lucas had reacted to the music in a way they had never reacted to anything else. She called the head pediatric neurologist who had been treating the twins. She explained what had happened, trying to keep her voice calm and objective. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then the doctor said carefully, "Mrs. Whitmore, I understand you want to believe your children are improving, but spontaneous recovery from severe cerebral palsy simply doesn't happen. What you're describing sounds like muscle spasms, which are common. I wouldn't read too much into it." Catherine felt anger flare in her chest. "I know the difference between a spasm and a voluntary movement. I've been watching my children for 5 years. This was different. I'm sure it seemed that way, but the brain damage your children sustained is permanent. There's no amount of music therapy that can reverse that. I'm sorry. I don't want to discourage you from finding activities they might enjoy. But please don't get your hopes up for miraculous improvement. That's not how neurology works." Catherine thanked him coldly and ended the call. Then she sat in the darkness of her office and made a decision. She didn't care what the doctors said. She didn't care what medical science claimed was possible. She had seen what she had seen, and she was going to pursue it with every resource she had. She would document everything, video record every session, track every tiny improvement. And if the medical establishment refused to believe her, she would prove them wrong. The next morning, Catherine explained to the nurses that she would be trying music therapy with the twins. She downplayed it, presenting it as a recreational activity rather than a treatment. She didn't mention what she had observed the day before. She didn't want their skepticism or their false encouragement. She just wanted to give Isaiah space to work with Lily and Lucas without interference. The nurses were supportive. Music therapy was a legitimate complementary treatment for various conditions, even if most medical professionals didn't believe it could create actual improvement in severe cases. Catherine set up a camera in the music room, positioned to capture the twins' faces and hands. Then she brought Lily and Lucas in and positioned them near the piano again. Isaiah was already there waiting. He looked nervous. What if yesterday was a fluke? What if it doesn't happen again? "Then we try again tomorrow," Catherine said firmly. "And the day after that. And the day after that. However long it takes." Isaiah nodded and sat down at the piano. He began to play the same gentle lullaby he had started with the day before. Catherine watched the twins intently, looking for any sign of response. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. The children sat motionless, just as they always had. Catherine felt hope beginning to drain away. Maybe the doctor was right. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe Lucas's eyes moved. Just like before, just as subtle, but definitely purposeful. He was looking toward the piano, toward Isaiah, toward the source of the music. Catherine's breath caught. She glanced at Isaiah and saw that he had noticed too. He kept playing smoothly, transitioning into a more complex piece. And as he did, Lily's hand began to move again. The same curling motion of her fingers, the same reaching gesture. It was real. It was happening again. Whatever connection music created in their damaged brains, it was real, and it was repeatable. Over the next 7 days, Isaiah played for the twins twice a day. Morning sessions that lasted 30 minutes, and afternoon sessions that stretched to 45 minutes or an hour as Isaiah grew more confident and the children showed more response. Catherine documented everything, filling notebooks with observations and reviewing video footage late into the night. The progress was small. Tiny incremental changes that most people would dismiss as meaningless. But to Catherine, each tiny change was a miracle. By day 3, Lily could consistently move her fingers in response to music. By day 5, Lucas was making small vocalizations, breathy sounds that seemed timed to the rhythm of whatever Isaiah was playing. By day 7, both children were tracking movement with their eyes when Isaiah walked around the piano while he played. Catherine showed the videos to the neurologist. He was dismissive. "Confirmation bias," he said. "You're interpreting random movements as purposeful because you want so badly for them to be." Catherine didn't argue. She just scheduled another appointment for 3 months out and decided she would prove him wrong. Isaiah was transforming too. The haunted, broken look in his eyes was slowly being replaced by something else. Not quite happiness. Not yet. But purpose. He had a reason to play again. A reason that honored Hope's memory instead of betraying it. He was using the gift she had given him, the love of music they had shared, to help other children who were trapped the same way she had been. He told Catherine one night, standing on the patio under the stars, "I used to think Hope died because I failed her, because I couldn't save her. But maybe she gave me something before she left. Maybe she taught me how to reach children like her. Maybe this is her legacy." Catherine squeezed his hand. "Maybe it's both of your legacies. Yours and hers together." The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into the daily music sessions. Catherine had been reviewing quarterly reports when she heard Isaiah playing. Something about the music was different today. More energetic, more joyful. She got up from her desk and walked to the music room, curious. What she saw when she reached the doorway made her freeze in shock. Lily's hand wasn't just moving anymore. She was deliberately tapping her fingers on the armrest of her wheelchair. Not randomly, not spasmodically. She was tapping in rhythm with the music Isaiah was playing, keeping time, participating. Catherine's hands flew to her mouth. Tears sprang to her eyes. Isaiah was so focused on his playing that he hadn't noticed yet. Catherine watched in silent awe as her daughter, her beautiful daughter, who hadn't voluntarily moved in 5 years, tapped along with the beat of the music. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, 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 tap. Following the rhythm perfectly. The piece ended. Isaiah stopped playing. In the silence that followed, Lily's fingers stilled. But then Isaiah started a new piece, something faster, something more complex. And Lily's fingers began moving again. Different pattern this time, matching the new rhythm, adapting to the change. "Isaiah." Catherine's voice came out as a choked whisper. "Isaiah, look." He turned and saw what Lily was doing. The color drained from his face. He stared at the little girl's hand moving in perfect time with the music he had been playing. "How long has she been doing that?" "Since you started today. She's not just responding to the music anymore. She's participating in it. She's making music with you." Isaiah stood up from the piano bench so fast he nearly knocked it over. He walked over to Lily, knelt down, and took both her hands in his. "Lily, sweetheart, can you hear me? Can you understand what I'm saying?" The little girl's blank expression didn't change, but her eyes, which had been staring at nothing, slowly shifted, moved, focused on Isaiah's face. For the first time in her life, Lily made eye contact with another human being. And in that moment, Catherine saw awareness, not just reaction, not just reflex, true awareness, true understanding. Isaiah saw it too. "Oh my God," he whispered. "She's in there. She's really in there." Emboldened by what was happening with Lily, Isaiah turned his attention to Lucas. "Lucas, buddy, I know you can hear me too. I know you understand. Can you show me? Can you give me a sign?" Lucas's eyes were already focused on Isaiah. They had been following him since he moved away from the piano. Isaiah reached out and took Lucas's hand the way he was holding Lily's. "Squeeze if you can hear me. Just try. You can do it." Nothing happened for a long moment, then so faintly that Catherine almost missed it. Isaiah's eyes widened. "He did it." He squeezed my hand. "Lucas, you amazing kid, you did it. Can you do it again?" Another squeeze. Stronger this time. More definite. Lucas was communicating. Actually, purposefully communicating. Catherine's knees went weak. She had to grab the doorframe to keep from collapsing. 5 years of silence. 5 years of wondering if her children were aware of anything happening around them. 5 years of talking to them, and reading to them, and loving them without ever knowing if any of it got through. And now she knew. They had been listening all along. They had been trapped inside bodies that wouldn't obey their commands, unable to show that they understood, unable to respond, unable to connect. But the music had opened a door. Isaiah had found the key that unlocked whatever prison their damaged brains had created. "Talk to them," Isaiah said urgently to Catherine. "They need to hear your voice. They need to know you're here." Catherine crossed the room on shaking legs. She knelt down between the two wheelchairs, taking Lily's hand and Lucas's hand in hers. "My babies," she whispered. "My beautiful, amazing babies. I'm here. Mommy's here. I've always been here. Can you hear me? Can you feel my hands holding yours?" Lily's fingers curled around Catherine's hand. Lucas squeezed. Both movements were weak and shaky, but they were deliberate. They were responses. They were her children telling her yes. Yes, we hear you. Yes, we know you. Yes, we love you too. After that day, everything changed. Catherine cleared her schedule completely. She stopped taking business calls. She delegated everything she could to her management team. The only thing that mattered was Lily and Lucas and the miraculous progress they were making. Isaiah increased the music sessions to 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. He played for hours, his fingers never seeming to tire, his creativity seemingly endless. He played classical pieces and jazz standards, and children's songs and original compositions. He played fast and slow, loud and soft, happy and sad. He played the full range of human emotion, and Lily and Lucas responded to all of it. Their progress accelerated. By week 4, Lily could tap complex rhythms with both hands. Lucas was vocalizing more frequently, his sounds becoming more varied and controlled. By week 5, Lily was holding Catherine's hand voluntarily when she came near. Lucas could track objects with his eyes and follow simple one-step instructions like look at the piano or look at mommy. By week 6, something unprecedented happened. Isaiah was playing a simple melody when Lucas suddenly made a sound that was unmistakably purposeful, not a random vocalization. A sound that seemed to be trying to form a word. It sounded like, Catherine and Isaiah froze, staring at the little boy. Did he just... Catherine couldn't finish the sentence. Lucas, Isaiah said gently. "Can you make that sound again?" Lucas's face scrunched up with visible effort. His mouth opened, and out came the same sound, clearer this time. Oh my God. Catherine was crying openly now. He's trying to talk. After 5 years of silence, he's trying to talk. Isaiah went to the piano and played a single note. "Lucas, can you match this sound? Just try." He demonstrated singing the note. Lucas's mouth opened again. This time the sound that came out was pitched musical. Not quite matching Isaiah's note, but definitely an attempt. The little boy was trying to sing. Catherine couldn't keep the progress secret anymore. The changes were too dramatic. The nurses noticed. The therapists noticed. And Catherine needed to know if this progress would continue, if there were ways to supplement the music therapy with traditional approaches to maximize the gains the children were making. She invited the head neurologist to the house for an observation. He arrived skeptical, prepared to explain away whatever Catherine claimed to have seen. But when he witnessed a session with Isaiah and the twins, his professional detachment cracked. He watched in visible shock as Lily tapped rhythms and Lucas vocalized, and both children demonstrated awareness and purposeful movement that he had explicitly said would never be possible. After the session, the doctor was pale. "I don't understand this. Their brain scans show massive damage to the motor cortex and language centers. This level of function shouldn't be possible. There must be. I need to run new tests, new imaging. Something has changed. Something in their neurology has changed. It's the music," Catherine said firmly. Isaiah found a way to reach them that medicine couldn't. The doctor shook his head. "Music therapy is supportive care. It's not curative. It can't regenerate damaged neurons. It can't rebuild neural pathways that were never properly formed in the first place. What you're showing me defies everything we know about brain development and injury. Then maybe what we know is incomplete," Isaiah said quietly. He had been standing in the corner letting Catherine talk to the doctor. But now he stepped forward. Maybe there are connections in the brain that medical scans can't measure. Maybe music accesses something deeper than just the physical structures you can see. Maybe there's more to consciousness and ability than just damaged tissue. The doctor had no answer to that. He scheduled the twins for a full battery of new tests and left shaking his head, muttering about impossible cases and medical literature. As the weeks passed, something else developed between Catherine and Isaiah. A deep friendship born from shared purpose and shared understanding. They spent hours together watching the twins progress, discussing strategies, celebrating tiny victories. They talked about their losses, about Robert and hope, about grief and guilt and the weight of loving someone you couldn't save. "I blamed myself for years," Catherine admitted one evening. They were sitting on the patio watching the sun set while the twins napped inside. "I thought if I had rested more during the pregnancy, if I had gone to the doctor sooner when I started having contractions, if I had chosen a different hospital, maybe they wouldn't have been born so early. Maybe they wouldn't have suffered the brain damage. Maybe everything would be different." I did the same thing Isaiah said. Hope was born premature too. Not as early as Lily and Lucas, but early enough. I tortured myself thinking about everything I could have done differently. Every decision I second-guessed. Every what-if scenario I played out in my mind. It took me years to accept that sometimes bad things happen, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just biology, and chance, and terrible luck. "Do you still feel guilty?" Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes, but less than I used to. Working with your kids has helped me see Hope's life differently. She wasn't just a tragedy. She was a person who taught me important things. She showed me the power of connection, even in the face of disability. She taught me that love doesn't need words to be real. And now I get to use those lessons to help other children. That feels like meaning, like purpose, like her life mattered beyond the sadness of her death. Catherine reached over and squeezed his hand. She did matter. And what you're doing now matters. You're giving my children something I thought they would never have. You're giving them a voice. We're doing it together, Isaiah corrected gently. You're the one who believed enough to let me try. You're the one who stood up to the doctors and followed your instincts. You're the one who sees your children as people with potential instead of just medical cases. That matters just as much as the music. 3 months into the daily music therapy, something miraculous happened. Catherine was in the music room with the twins while Isaiah played. It was a typical afternoon session. Lily was tapping along with the music. Lucas was vocalizing. Both children were engaged and responsive in ways that still amazed Catherine every single day. Then Isaiah transitioned into playing Happy Birthday. It wasn't anyone's birthday, but it was a simple, recognizable melody that he sometimes used to work on Lucas's pitch matching. He played through it once. Then again. Then he paused and said, "Lucas, can you try to sing with me? Just the tune, no words." Lucas's face scrunched with concentration. His mouth opened, and out came a sound that made Catherine gasp. It wasn't just a vocalization. It was a melody. Rough and imperfect, but unmistakably an attempt to sing Happy Birthday. He was matching Isaiah's tune. He was making music. "Oh my God," Catherine breathed. "Isaiah, he's singing. He's actually singing." Isaiah's eyes were bright with tears. He kept playing, and Lucas kept trying to sing along. The sound was breathy and weak, but the intent was clear. The little boy who doctors said would never make purposeful sounds was singing. He was creating music with his voice. But that wasn't the biggest miracle of the day. That came 10 minutes later when Isaiah finished playing and turned to talk to the children. "You both did so well today. I'm so proud of you guys." And Lucas, with enormous effort, with his whole face straining and his small body trembling from the exertion, opened his mouth and said a word. Not a sound, not a vocalization. A word, clear and unmistakable. Ma. Catherine's world stopped. She stared at her son, unable to process what she had just heard. Isaiah, did he just, Ma? Lucas said it again, his eyes locked on Catherine's face. Ma. Catherine let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. She rushed to Lucas's wheelchair and dropped to her knees, taking his face in her hands. "Yes, baby. Yes, I'm Mama. I'm here." "Oh my God, Lucas, you're talking. You're saying my name. You're calling me Mama." Encouraged by Lucas's breakthrough, Isaiah turned his attention to Lily. "Lily, sweetheart, I know you're working hard too. I know you can hear everything we're saying. Can you try to make a sound? Any sound at all?" Lily's fingers were still tapping on her wheelchair, keeping rhythm with some internal music only she could hear, but her eyes focused on Isaiah's face. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Opened again. She was trying. Catherine could see the immense effort it took, could see her daughter fighting against the damage in her brain that made simple actions impossibly difficult. "Take your time," Isaiah said gently. "There's no rush. Just try when you're ready." Catherine held her breath. Seconds passed, then a minute. Then Lily's mouth opened one more time and a sound emerged. Quiet and hesitant, but purposeful. "E." Yes, Isaiah's face lit up. "That's perfect, Lily. That's amazing. Can you do it again? E. E. Clearer this time. Stronger." Lily was finding her voice. Over the next hour, Isaiah worked with both children on simple sounds. Ma, da, e, Ooh, the basic building blocks of language. It was work that speech therapists had tried for years without success. But something about the musical context, about the way Isaiah framed it as singing rather than talking, made it accessible to the twins in a way traditional therapy never had. By the end of the session, Lucas could say ma and da consistently. Lily could make 3 different vowel sounds. It wasn't full language, it wasn't fluent communication, but it was more than doctors had said would ever be possible. It was proof that Lily and Lucas had voices that could be heard, that they were capable of growth and change and learning. That night after the twins were in bed, Catherine stood in the doorway of the music room where Isaiah was playing softly to himself. "How did you know?" she asked. "How did you know music would work when everything else failed?" Isaiah's hands stilled on the keys. "I didn't know. I just hoped. Music reached hope when nothing else could. I thought maybe it could reach Lily and Lucas too, but I never imagined. I never thought the progress would be this dramatic. The doctors are calling it unexplained spontaneous recovery. They're writing papers about it. They want to study the twins, run more tests, figure out what's happening in their brains." "Will you let them?" Catherine walked into the room and sat down on the piano bench beside Isaiah. "Yes, if it means other children might benefit from what we've learned. If it means other parents might have hope. But I'm making sure they understand the truth. This isn't spontaneous. This isn't medical intervention. This is you, this is the music, this is the connection you created." Not everyone was happy about the twins' progress. Some medical professionals were openly skeptical, suggesting that Catherine was exaggerating minor improvements or misinterpreting random behaviors. Some ethicists questioned whether it was appropriate to get the children's hopes up with unproven therapy. And some disability advocates worried that the focus on fixing Lily and Lucas sent the message that disabled lives weren't valuable as they were. The criticism came to a head when a prominent pediatric neurologist published an article questioning the legitimacy of the twins' improvement. He argued that without proper controlled studies, it was irresponsible to attribute their progress to music therapy. He called for an independent medical evaluation and suggested that the children be removed from Isaiah's care until proper research protocols could be established. Catherine was furious. "They want to take my children away from the one thing that's helping them, because it doesn't fit their textbooks, because they can't explain it." "Maybe they're right," Isaiah said quietly. They were in Catherine's office, looking at the article on her computer screen. "Maybe I'm not qualified to be doing this. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a janitor who plays piano. Maybe the twins would be better off with actual professionals who know what they're doing." "Absolutely not." Catherine's voice was fierce. "Those professionals had 5 years to help my children and accomplished nothing. You've been here 3 months and they're talking and making music and showing awareness. Results matter more than credentials. We're not stopping. But if the medical community is against us, then we prove them wrong." Catherine stood up and began pacing. "We document everything. We get independent evaluations from doctors who don't have a stake in being right about what's possible. We show the world that conventional medicine doesn't have all the answers, and if we have to fight every skeptical doctor in the country, we fight." Isaiah looked at her with something like awe. "You'd do that? Risk your reputation? Risk criticism from the entire medical establishment?" "For my children, in a heartbeat." Catherine stopped pacing and looked directly at Isaiah. "And for you, because what you're doing matters, not just for Lily and Lucas, for every child like them, every family that's been told there's no hope, every person who's been written off as unreachable. We're proving that's wrong, and I won't let anyone stop us." Catherine used her resources and connections to assemble a team of independent medical experts willing to evaluate the twins objectively. Neurologists from different institutions who had no prior involvement with the case. speech pathologists who specialized in severe disabilities, physical therapists with expertise in cerebral palsy. She invited them all to observe sessions with Isaiah and examine the twins' progress. The evaluations took 2 weeks. Each expert spent hours with Lily and Lucas reviewing their medical history, watching them interact with Isaiah, testing their abilities against established developmental benchmarks. Catherine was nervous. If these independent evaluators sided with the skeptics, she would have no leg to stand on. Her claims would be dismissed as maternal bias. Isaiah's work would be discredited. But as the evaluations concluded and the experts compiled their reports, Catherine's anxiety gave way to vindication. Every single evaluator confirmed that the twins had made dramatic, measurable improvements. They were functioning at levels that shouldn't be possible, given the severity of their brain damage. They were demonstrating awareness, purposeful movement, and vocalizations that met clinical definitions of communication. The lead neurologist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, who had spent 30 years studying pediatric brain injury, was particularly emphatic. "I've never seen anything like this. The scans show the same structural damage that's been present since their birth. But somehow these children have developed compensatory pathways that allow for functional abilities we don't typically see in cases this severe. I can't explain the mechanism, but the results are undeniable. Whatever Mr. Monroe is doing with music therapy, it's accessing something in these children's brains that traditional interventions missed." The report from the independent evaluation team was published in a major medical journal. It didn't claim to explain how music therapy worked. It didn't propose new theories about brain plasticity. It simply presented the facts Lily and Lucas Whitmore had made unprecedented progress after 3 months of intensive music therapy following 5 years of failed traditional treatment. Their case warranted further study. Their caregivers' methods warranted serious consideration. The article didn't silence all the critics, but it shifted the conversation. Suddenly, Catherine and Isaiah weren't fringe believers in pseudoscience. They were pioneers working at the cutting edge of therapeutic intervention. Other families with disabled children started reaching out, asking questions, begging for help. One evening, after a particularly good session, where Lily managed to say "ma" for the first time, Catherine and Isaiah sat in the music room talking about the future. "We can't help everyone who's asking," Isaiah said. "There are hundreds of families reaching out, maybe thousands. I'm just one person. What if you weren't?" Catherine leaned forward, her eyes bright with an idea that had been forming for weeks. "What if we created a Program A Foundation that trains other musicians to work with disabled children the way you've worked with Lily and Lucas? We could develop protocols, create training materials, fund research into why music therapy works. We could help thousands of families instead of just mine." Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. "That would take a lot of resources. A lot of time and energy. And I have resources," Catherine interrupted. "I have more money than I'll ever need. And I have nothing more important to spend it on than this, than giving other parents what you gave me. Hope, progress, a reason to believe their children can improve. What would we call it?" Catherine smiled, but her eyes were full of tears. "I was thinking, Hope's Music Foundation, if that's okay with you. To honor your daughter. To acknowledge that this all started with her, with what she taught you about the power of connection." Isaiah's face crumpled. He covered it with his hands, his shoulders shaking. When he finally looked up, he was crying openly. She would have loved that. She would have been so happy knowing that her life meant something beyond just the people who loved her, that she was helping other children even after she was gone. Then it's decided. Catherine reached over and took Isaiah's hand. We'll build this together. For Hope, for Lily, and Lucas. For every child who's been told they'll never improve. For all of them, Isaiah agreed, echoing the words Catherine had said 3 months ago when this journey began. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Catherine stepped down as chairman of Whitmore Medical Technologies to focus full-time on the foundation. Isaiah developed a training curriculum working with music therapists and neuroscientists to translate his instinctive approach into teachable methods. They hired staff, rented office space, set up a clinic attached to the mansion where children could come for music therapy sessions. Lily and Lucas continued to progress. By their 6th birthday, Lily could say 10 different words and could move her hands with enough control to press piano keys deliberately. Lucas had a vocabulary of 15 words and could sing simple melodies. They weren't walking. They weren't fully independent, but they were communicating. They were engaged with the world. They were no longer trapped in silence. The foundation grew faster than Catherine and Isaiah had anticipated. Musicians from across the country applied for training positions. Families flew in from other states, other countries bringing their disabled children for evaluation and therapy. Research grants funded studies into how music affected brain plasticity and neural development. Major medical centers started partnering with the foundation to integrate music therapy into their pediatric programs. And through it all, every single day, Isaiah played for Lily and Lucas. That was non-negotiable. No matter how busy the foundation got, no matter how many other children needed help, Isaiah's first responsibility was to the twins who had brought him back to music. To the children who had saved him in the process of being saved themselves. One afternoon, Catherine walked into the music room during a session and stopped in the doorway, overcome by emotion. Isaiah was at the piano playing something beautiful and complex. Lily and Lucas were in their wheelchairs, positioned where they could see him. Lily's hands were moving across a small keyboard mounted on her wheelchair, picking out a simple melody in harmony with Isaiah's playing. Lucas was singing, his voice thin and wavering, but on pitch, calling out vowel sounds that matched the notes Isaiah played. It looked like music therapy, like treatment. But Catherine knew what it really was. It was joy. It was connection. It was 3 people making music together because they loved each other and because music was the language they shared. It was everything she had thought her children would never have. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in November, almost exactly 1 year after Catherine had first discovered Isaiah playing piano. The weather was cold and gray outside, but inside the music room, everything was warm and bright. Isaiah was running through his usual routine with the twins. Warm-up exercises, simple melodies, call and response, where he would play a phrase and the children would try to echo it back. He was in the middle of a piece he had written specifically for Lily and Lucas. Something cheerful and upbeat, when he noticed something odd. Lily's hand wasn't just pressing keys anymore. She was playing a pattern. A deliberate, repeating pattern that matched the rhythm of Isaiah's piece. She was improvising, creating her own music instead of just responding to his. Isaiah stopped playing abruptly. In the sudden silence, Lily continued her pattern for a few more notes, then stopped and looked up at him questioningly. "That was you, Isaiah," said his voice full of wonder. "Lily, that was your own music. You weren't copying me. You were composing." Lily's mouth curved up slightly at the corners. It wasn't a full smile. Her facial muscles still didn't have that much control, but it was close. It was her way of showing pleasure, of showing pride in her accomplishment. Lucas Isaiah said, turning to the little boy. "What about you? Can you make up your own song?" Lucas's face scrunched in concentration. His mouth opened, and out came a string of sounds that had melody and rhythm but no words. He was humming, creating a tune that didn't exist before, making music that was entirely his own. Isaiah looked up at Catherine, who was standing in the doorway, as she often did, watching the sessions. They're not just responding anymore, they're creating. They're artists. But even that wasn't the biggest miracle of the morning. That came a few minutes later, when Isaiah went back to playing, and Lucas suddenly held up his hand. The gesture was shaky and imprecise, but the intent was clear. He wanted Isaiah to stop. He wanted attention. Isaiah stopped playing immediately. "What is it, buddy? What do you need?" Lucas's mouth opened, his face strained with effort, and out came two syllables that nearly stopped Catherine's heart. "Isa." "What did you say?" Isaiah's voice was barely a whisper. "Isa." Clearer this time, more confident. Lucas was saying Isaiah's name, not Mama or Dada or a simple vowel sound, a proper name. 2 syllables. Purposeful communication. Lucas. Isaiah rushed over to the little boy's wheelchair, tears streaming down his face. "You said my name! You amazing, incredible kid! Say it again." "Isa?" Lucas's eyes were bright. He knew he had done something special. He could see the impact of his words on the adult he cared about. "Isa." Catherine was sobbing openly now, not even trying to hide it. Her son was talking, actually forming words and using them meaningfully. After 6 years of silence, after being told it would never happen, her baby was talking. That evening, after the twins were in bed, Catherine and Isaiah sat in the music room like they had so many times before. But everything felt different now. They had crossed some invisible threshold. The twins weren't just improving anymore. They were becoming who they were meant to be. They were finding their voices and their abilities and their place in a world that had tried to write them off. "I never thought this would happen," Catherine said softly. "Even after all the progress, even after everything we've accomplished. Part of me still believed the doctors, still thought there was a limit to how far they could go. But hearing Lucas say your name today, that shattered every limitation I had accepted. If he can do that, what else can he do? What else can they do?" "I don't know," Isaiah answered honestly. "I don't think anyone knows. Every day they surprise me. Every day they do something I thought was impossible. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe the limitations we see aren't real. Maybe they're just failures of imagination." Catherine turned to look at him. "You know what I realized today? This isn't just about Lily and Lucas anymore. It's not even just about hope. This is about changing how the world sees disability, about proving that people who are written off as hopeless actually have unlimited potential if we just find the right way to reach them. That's what the foundation needs to be about. Not just music therapy, but believing in possibility when everyone else sees impossibility." Isaiah nodded slowly. "Hope's music foundation. But it's really about hope itself, isn't it? About refusing to give up. About finding new paths when the old ones are blocked. About love being stronger than disability, or death, or any limitation the world tries to impose." "Exactly." Catherine reached over and took Isaiah's hand. It had become a familiar gesture between them, this simple contact that signified partnership and friendship and shared purpose. "You gave me my children back. You gave them voices and agency and joy. I can never repay that. But I can make sure what you did for us becomes available to every family that needs it." I can make sure Hope's legacy and your gift reaches as far as possible." "We'll do it together," Isaiah said, "just like everything else." "Partners." "Partners," Catherine agreed. 1 year after Isaiah first played piano for Lily and Lucas, the foundation held a celebration. It was officially a fundraiser, a gala dinner at a fancy hotel with wealthy donors and influential supporters. But it was really a celebration of how far they had come, of children who were thriving, of families who had hope, of a janitor and a billionaire who had changed the world because they refused to accept that some problems were unsolvable. The highlight of the evening was a special performance, Isaiah at the piano playing a piece he had composed over the past year, and beside him in their wheelchairs but sitting straighter than ever before, Lily and Lucas. They couldn't play complex pieces, but they could press keys and make sounds and participate in creating music. They wore matching outfits, their faces bright with excitement, even if their expressions still didn't fully match their emotions. Isaiah played the opening phrases of the composition. Then he paused and nodded to the twins. Lily pressed a key on her adapted keyboard. One clear note that rang through the silent ballroom. Then Lucas hummed his voice thin but on pitch, adding harmony to his sister's note. Back and forth they went, with Isaiah weaving his professional playing around their simple contributions, making their small efforts part of something larger and more beautiful than the sum of its parts. The audience watched in stunned silence. Many of them were crying. They were witnessing something that shouldn't be possible. Two children who were supposed to be unable to communicate were making music in front of hundreds of people. They were performing. They were artists. When the piece ended, the applause was thunderous. But Isaiah didn't stand up to take a bow. Instead, he turned to Lily and Lucas and said loud enough for the microphone to pick up, "You did it. I'm so proud of you both." And Lucas, in front of all those people with confidence that would have been unimaginable a year ago, said clearly, "Isa, Mama, Mu-ik, Isaiah, Mama, music." 3 words that contained the whole story. 3 words that represented everything they had overcome and everything they had become. Later that night, after the gala had ended and the twins were home in bed, Catherine stood in the doorway of the music room one more time. Isaiah was sitting at the piano, not playing, just resting his hands on the keys. He looked up when he sensed her presence and smiled. It was a real smile now, not weighted with pain the way his smiles used to be. He had healed too, in the process of helping Lily and Lucas heal. "Thank you," Catherine said simply. "For what? For being in the right place at the right time. For having the courage to try when everyone said it was impossible. For sharing your gift and your grief and your heart with my children. For saving us all." Isaiah shook his head. "You're the one who said yes. You're the one who believed. You're the one who fought the whole medical establishment to give us a chance. I just played piano. You did a lot more than play piano." Catherine walked into the room and sat beside him on the bench the way she had so many times over the past year. "You taught me that science doesn't have all the answers, that love and connection can accomplish things medicine can't measure, that my children were never broken, they were just locked away, and you found the key." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Isaiah played a few soft notes, a gentle melody that had become Lily and Lucas's favorite over the past months. "I used to think hope died for nothing," he said quietly, "that her life was just tragedy without meaning. But I was wrong. She taught me everything I needed to know to help your children. She gave me the tools to create Hope's Music Foundation and change how people think about disability. Her life wasn't short. It was complete. It was exactly as long as it needed to be to accomplish what it was meant to accomplish. Catherine rested her head on Isaiah's shoulder, too moved to speak. They sat like that, two people who had found each other in grief and built something beautiful from their shared pain. Outside, the night was dark and cold, but inside, surrounded by music and memory and hope for the future, everything was warm and bright. In her mind, Catherine heard Lucas's voice from earlier that evening. Isaiah, Mama, music. 3 words that told the whole story. 3 words that promised the story wasn't over, it was just beginning. 3 words that meant impossible was just another word for not yet.